Hello everyone, Fantasy Girl here, as my friends know me online as Claire Faye. I'm back with another video today, and this is actually something I've been wanting to do for a while now. So since I've been wanting to do a lot more lore videos lately, I will be doing once a week until this whole virus thing is over. And so these videos are going to be about the lore of the many different places around the world of Final Fantasy XIV. This first video is just going to kick off what I hope is going to be a very good series about the many different lands throughout the world of Hydaelyn. And not just the places that we already know about, like when we visited Udal and Doma, but other places that they just even mention, such as like the New World and Sharlayan. Most of that is probably going to be speculation, though, until we get more information about them, especially since we don't even have a map of what those places even look like just yet. But this is just going to be a discussion of the world at large and a list for all the places that we're going to discuss in future videos. Also, if you haven't played through the game yet, let me warn you that there are going to be some major spoiler alerts for both the story and the game, so watch this at your own risk. Alright, so we're going to get straight down into it. Now, we already know that Hydaelyn is the name of the Mother Crystal, yet it also happens to be the name of the planet that everyone is living on, even though it's rarely used by the people who live here. It also goes by a much more common name nowadays as the Source, which was the original Hydaelyn and was eventually sundered into 13 reflections or shards. At its core is the Mother Crystal Hydaelyn, who seems to serve as the very center of the life stream and is the source of all the ether that flows through the world. I guess the best way to describe what ether is, it's kind of like the lifeblood of the world. And everything on this world is dependent on it, because that's what everything is made up of. And it flows through this world like blood in the veins. And the Mother Crystal serves as its heart. At least that's kind of the impression that we're getting from it. So until Stormblood came out, though, this was the original map of the world. This is all that we knew. This is the land of Eorzea, where we, as the adventurer in the game, first start off. But this world is actually made up of several large continents, and the one that Eorzea resides on, including the city-states of Udal, Gridania, Ishgard, and Alamigo, all reside on Aldenad, with the island of Vildbrand right off the western coast holding Limsa Lominsa, but it's still technically part of Aldenad. After Stormblood, we got a much larger map revealing more of the three great continents and the Far East, though much of Isambard still remains hidden and other distant realms like the New World and Miracidia haven't been seen yet. Now, when the world was still complete, large cities such as the city of Amarat stretched across this entire world. However, long story short, the goddess Hydaelyn was summoned to act as chains for the dark god Zodiark. At the end of their battle, the world was sundered and split into 13 reflections, as well as the source itself. Now, when that all happened, all these shards started off as like perfect mirror images of each other. They were identical in every way, at least in the very beginning. But over the centuries, like different choices were made, and they each started growing, with different wars and the rise and fall of different cities and empires, so that eventually, all these worlds, while still very similar at the core, such as certain landscapes, they are now their own separate and more original worlds than we would imagine. Such is the case of the first reflection in the region of Norvrant, or the 13th reflection, which became the Void after it was destroyed by a flood of darkness. Now, time here is a little bit on the shaky side, so it's very difficult to say exactly when this all happened, but I would say that this story in the game that we're starting off in takes place roughly around like 12,000 years after the Sundering in the land of Eorzea was pretty much created. Now, Eorzea is upon the continent known as Aldenard, with the Isle of Vildbrand off to the side here, with several smaller islands scattered about the waters. Most of the game does take place here in Eorzea, and when you first step here, you are greeted by many different landscapes, such as the grasslands and the beaches of Lenocia, which is entirely upon the Isle of Vildbrand, as well as the city of Limsa Lominsa. We have the desert plains of Thanalan, where we have the city of Udal, and the thick forests of the Black Shroud and the city of Gridania. Now, when one first starts off in the game, you are given the choice to be able to start off in any one of these three locations. Eventually, though, you are able to go to all three of them, and the more that you unlock in the game, the more that the world opens up to you, such as the crystalline landscape of Mordona, where we have the growing outposts of Revenant's Toll, the Crystal Tower, and Silver Tear Falls, which is said to be at the very nexus of the planet's ethereal energy. Moving onwards to Heaven's Ward, we got to the frozen mountains of Kororthis and the city of Ishgard. the wastelands of Dravania, and the ruins of the city-state of Sharlayan, now known as Ilshire, as well as the mountainous cliffs of Girolbanya that line up around the Alabathia spine. Now, all of that is upon the continent of Aldenard, and that's just one of the three great continents. The other two are known as Ishabard and Othard. Now, when we were introduced to Heaven's Ward, we were also introduced to a bunch of floating islands, so we can't count those out either, such as the floating islands of the Churning Mist or in the Sea of Clouds, and especially with Azys Law, which is actually more artificial than natural because it was created by ancient Alak, and we'll also get to each one of those separately as well. And after being introduced to Stormblood, we learn that there are actually underwater civilizations as well, such as Suinosatu in the Ruby Sea. The Ruby Sea is going to be an entire video all in of itself as well. We have a lot to cover. Now on the map, we do see that Ishabard is sandwiched between Audinald and Othard, though we don't really see anything other than these clouds, so we don't know for sure exactly what the land looks like just yet, but it is supposed to be just as large, if not even larger than Aldenard. But by moving onward to the east here, we have the Far East and the continent of Othard, which seems to be the smallest of the three continents, and we also have the Hingashi archipelago. I suppose that the best way to describe this land is kind of the game world's version of Japan, or rather a much more older version of Japan. The city of Kugane resides upon the archipelago, though so far we have only seen just the one city of Kugane itself. We have not seen the rest of the islands yet. We also have the Ruby Sea between the two landscapes before reaching Doma on the far eastern corner of Othard, in the land of Yaxia. Now, an important thing to remember here about Othard is that it's pretty much isolated. That, and especially Hingashi, are... I would not say that Othard is completely cut off from the rest of the world, but it is heavily isolated. Most contact that Eorzea has with the Far East, especially in recent years, stems from when the refugees fled Doma after their failed uprising. But thanks to the events of Stormblood, we have seen almost all of Othard, including the Azim Steppe, which is the ancestral home to the Al-Ra. And we have this dead-looking region here, which is also known as the Burn. It's a land that has been sucked dry in ether and became a barren wasteland. Now, from what we know of the Azim Steppe, it's home to numerous small tribes, and it has been described as having holy mountains where no bloodshed may take place, and it is said to have been the domain of inhabited by dragons not far from Doma. Though we really haven't seen any dragons here, it is possible that one of Midgardsormr's other children lived. Out of all 7 of his children, we only know of 5. We don't know about the other 2 yet. So it is possible that maybe 1 or 2 of his other children could be living here, but that's not confirmed. Now, after leaving Othard, we have Ishabard in the middle, and we really don't have too much information about the lands here. We do know that it is an abundant reservoir of cerulean deposits, which is how the nation of Garlemald was able to build up their empire so quickly. Thanks to the ceruleum, they were able to create a major technological empire growing rapidly just over the last 50 years. I mean, sure, they were being led by an Ascian, but it's still impressive. Garlemald had set out to conquer as many lands as possible, and until Stormblood, they actually managed to hold onto control of Othard, and in this case especially with Doma. But other nations such as the city of Dalmasca have also fallen to their rule during these last 50 years, and what happened with Dalmasca was it pretty much was left to ruins after the citizens rose up only to have their rebellion crushed. All in all, pretty much this entire continent of Ishabard has been conquered by Garlemald. We do know that there are other such nations and landscapes here, such as the Gilmore Jungle, which is the home to the Viera, and the Orbon Monastery. And before Garlemald's expansion, we do know that there were other such nations, such as Boja, Corvos, and the Republic of Landis. And it does look like we will be learning much more about these other nations as the story continues, and we do eventually head off to Garlemald to put an end to the fighting. At least that's what I'm hoping for. So these are actually the 3 main continents that we know of, but we also have some smaller ones that we haven't seen yet. We've only been given just a little bit of clues about. They're not even on the map yet. Of course, we do have some other lands here that we have heard a great deal of and even have them on the map, such as Thannar in the Old World. Thavnar is home to the city-state of Razat Han, and we do hear about them from time to time. It is a land that is known for their alchemists and dancing girls, and it's even through the dancer questlines that we come to learn a little bit more of what kind of land that Thannar is. I picture it as much more of a kind of Middle Eastern feel to it, and I'm really hoping that we do get to at least see what it looks like someday. The island itself of Thannar, however, is also known as a pirate haven with precious resources that guarantee its independence, and it's neutral when it comes to the war with Garlemald and other nations. We also have the Old World, and we have the archipelago to the northwestern part of Aldenard, where the scholarly nation of Sharlayan and many of the Scions hail from. At one point, the Sharlayans did travel to Eorzea and built the city-states, also named after Sharlayan, in the Dravanian hinterlands. But when Garlemald began its crusade to conquer Eorzea 15 years before the storyline, the entire population left the city abandoned and returned to their motherland away from all the fighting. These are just some of the places that we've seen on the map so far, and we are still waiting for more details about them, as well as waiting for another updated map to come along sooner or later just to show us what the rest of the world is supposed to look like. But we do know that there are other continents in this world other than what we see here, such as the lands of Miracidia, which is a continent to the south of Eorzea, and is also the land where the dragons Bahamut and Tiamat settled to sire countless of their children. But perhaps it's best known for when the Allagan invasion at the end of the Third Astral Era, with devastation that the continent never truly recovered from. There were other native tribes to this land, besides the dragons, that ended up summoning powerful primals such as the Warring Triad in desperation against the technological advanced invaders. But until we actually get to see the land for itself, I'm afraid I can't really offer an idea of what it might look like. I'm guessing it might be a little bit more on the wild side. Like, it's probably mostly like a very dangerous, very inhospitable land. That's really the best that I can say about it for now. But there is another land of Eorzea to the north, and the name itself means the first land. Not sure how I got that name, but it's actually supposed to be a series of islands that were home to the sea wolf Rogadin. But other than that, very little else is known about these lands. And lastly, we have the lands of the New World. Now, this is supposed to be a western land that has only been recently discovered, and because of that, most details about it are largely unknown, at least for the time being. We do know a few bits and pieces here, such how it seems to be inhabited by at least a few Huel tribes, such as the Wallaki, and their territory at least is rich with ceruleum. We also know that it is home to the Maju-Ja and their nation of Mamuk, though we will be discussing all the beast tribes and their lands in these videos as well. Another thing that we do know about it, though, is that maritime traders have brought back a few goods from the New World to Eorzea, including some native species of plants that have joined Eorzea's ecology, like the ever-famous Popoto. Altogether, those are all the lands that we know of so far. These are the lands that have been confirmed and that we are kind of holding out hope that we will be able to see someday. I am hopeful that we will be able to explore other parts of this world, including Miracidia and the New World one day, but that may be far off into the future, but it is something fun to think about, and we can look forward to seeing those again later on. Alright everyone, I think that should cover pretty much everything, at least the important pieces. This is the world map that we know of so far, and until we do get an updated map, this is pretty much how it's going to be, at least for the time being, and I feel like it was a successful video. As of right now, at this point in time, we are still anxiously waiting for patch 5.3 to come out. So in case you're wondering, we will also be doing a series of videos of the lands from the first, at least the ones that we know about and is still around. In fact, I may be doing a video next week about the first and just an introduction to the lands there. But yes, all the lands that I did mention in this video will be part of their own separate videos far off into the future. So I will be doing at least one lore video per week. So I do hope that you're all looking forward to what I have planned for next week. And if you have a suggestion or a request of which lands you would like to see next, please drop a review down below. Let me know what you think. And rest assured, we will be getting to all the lands that we know of so far. And as we go further on into the story, I'm sure that we will get updated versions like such as the map, and including a lot more history, a lot more lore, and eventually going to a lot of these places. That's what I'm hoping for. But when that does come around, I will be doing updated videos about everything that we do know. Hopefully this will keep everyone entertained until 5.3 comes out. So until next time everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope that no one goes too crazy while trapped in quarantine. So you all be safe out there, and I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.